Hey everyone, it's Theo from Spectrum Gardening. So today we're going to be talking about hardening off your seedlings. And I'm not talking about kicking them out of the house and forcing them to toughen up and learn some street smarts. But I am talking about how to prepare them for the real world outside the sterile environment of being grown inside. So you can see to my right over here that I have a tray of broccoli that I've moved out to the greenhouse. And here's a close-up of it. So you can see how nice they look. How green and how nice their leaves are. I started these inside under my grow lights in the same type of soil we've been using for all our seedlings. And about 1 week ago or so, I moved them out to the greenhouse to start kind of getting them to adjust to the regular weather. One thing I have been doing while they've been out here though is watching the weather. I've been watching it very carefully because since they've been outside in a controlled environment basically, they haven't been subjected to really cold temperatures. So I don't want to be putting them into shock. Luckily, the temperatures have held really nicely for us. If it was not holding nicely, if it was not holding over a certain number, even with the greenhouse being semi-protected, I would take like a piece of rime or a thin bed sheet, and I would just drape it over the seedlings like this overnight, and then I would take it off in the morning. And that would provide them with a little bit of protection versus having to bring them in and out. So the way that I do my hardening off with seedlings is I take them from my grow rack and I put them inside my greenhouse. That's it. That's not the right way to do it. I do it like this is because it takes a lot of time to do it properly. It takes a lot of effort. And I've noticed in my experience, taking it from inside and putting it in the greenhouse, the plants don't blink. They're not even phased as long as I watch the temperature properly. If I'm not watching the temperature and it does dip too low, or if I don't protect the plants with rime or even a thin bed sheet, then I can start having some problems with that. But because I know to watch the temperature and I know to protect them if need be, I haven't had any issues doing it this way. I take my plants from inside the grow setup that we have inside. I put them in the greenhouse for about a week or so, plus or minus a little bit depending on the weather, and then I plant them straight out in the garden. And they don't miss a beat. They keep on going. But later on in the next clip, I'm going to cover how you properly should be hardening off your seedling. One of the most common mistakes we've seen people do is take an annual type of plant from a controlled environment and plant it directly into the garden that hasn't been hardened off properly. That plant promptly goes into shock. What's happened there is you've taken a plant from a controlled environment, one that's warm, one that's comfortable, one that doesn't have wind going per se all the time, and one that's more or less kind of not overly wet or cold or anything like that. And you've plunked them into an environment that's windy, that's chilly, that maybe your beds are a little bit, maybe the soil you put them in is a little bit wet, or maybe it's a little bit drier, or give or take a little bit, right? They're going to shock and saying, hey, what'd you do to me? I'm not happy. And you know, sometimes those plants do die. But other times they do bounce back. So earlier in this video, we covered the way that I harden off seedlings. It's a very simple, very efficient way of doing it. Because we do so many of them, I just don't have the time or energy or the desire, to be frank with you, to harden off seedlings the way technically they should be done. However, the way that I do it works just fine. I've never had any issues with my plants going to shock, or with people buying them from us and them going to shock because they've been hardened off. There's the proper way of doing things, and then there's the way that I do things. So we're going to cover the proper way of doing things next. So if you're buying a seedling from either a commercial greenhouse or from someone you don't know that hasn't hardened off them properly, or maybe you're growing your own at home and you need to harden them off. So the proper way to do it is early in the morning, you find a nice shady spot that's also protected by the wind. And you put your seedlings out there for a couple hours in the shade, and you kind of let them get adjusted to the weather and kind of the difference in temperature and the wind, and then you bring them in. And then the next day, you put them back in the shade for a little bit longer. And you keep increasing the intervals that you're putting them outside. But you always bring them back inside, especially at night. And then it comes to a point where you put them under dappled sunshine. So they get direct sun, so they get a little bit of direct sun, but not too much to burn their leaves. And then after extending that period for a little while, then you go on to putting them into direct sun. And then this process takes about a week or so, depending on how well you keep track of it. And then at the end of this process, you'll actually be putting them out early morning in direct sun and letting them be out overnight in a semi-protected area. And then you do that for a couple nights too, and then they're ready to plant. That's a lot of work to take your seedlings out, in, out, in, and to cover them and to watch the shade and to bring them back and to make sure they don't get direct sun and to have them in protected area so the wind doesn't strip their leaves down and they don't get wind burn. That's a lot of work. We don't do that like what we said earlier. So if you don't have a greenhouse like mine in the back, mine's kind of a cheapo version of just basically almost a car frame with opaque plastic around it. Even if you just have clear plastic or if you glass, those work too. But if you don't have a greenhouse per se and you have a cold frame, you can use that also. Or you have like just a small kind of stand-up greenhouse, not quite a walk-in like mine, but just with shelves. You can use that to harden off your seedlings also without having to go through the huge process of putting them into shade, taking them out of shade, doing like that. The only thing you have to kind of watch sometimes, like what I said earlier, is the temperatures and the overnight temperatures. The reason I have my broccoli out right now is because it's a cold hardy variety of veggie. It does best in the cooler temperatures. I haven't quite planted it yet because there is one more night of -1 coming up, I believe. I think that's tomorrow. So probably after this weekend, I'll be planting my broccoli into a couple of my beds here. That's the only thing that you kind of want to watch. But let's say you did plant your veggies and you have a cold temperature coming up. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, just take a piece of reemay or a piece of like even bed sheet or something like that and just put them over your seedlings and cover them for the night, even if they're planted in your garden bed. And even that thin layer of material is going to provide them some protection from the cold. Before you start hardening your seedlings off outside, there are a couple things you can do inside to help prepare them for that process. So one of the things that you can do to help prepare them for the process is airflow. One of the options is to run your hands over the seedlings like this, kind of just do that and kind of help the stems here toughen up. And not only does it kind of help them become a little bit more sturdy, but it also it helps stimulate growth. So then when they go outside, they're just a little bit stronger, a little bit tougher. And then in addition to running your hands over the seedlings, is to get a couple fans. What I did recently was I bought a couple of USB fans like this off Amazon. Not a couple, I think I have 8 of them. And I attached them onto my grow rack by this green wire rack. Green wire. If you know me and you follow me on Facebook, you'll know how much I love this type of rubber, this rubber coated wire. I get it from the dollar store and I use it for pretty much everything in my garden. So these fans are USB fans. They plug in. Here's the wire. They came in a 2-pack like this, and they had a USB plug like that on it there. And then I bought a USB cord extender. So the extender is like 8 feet or something like that. So it goes here and all the way down in there. And then I also bought a USB multi-block so I can plug in all my fans all at once without having to worry about getting more adapters. It's just one block. So I bought the adapter block, I bought the USB extending cords, and the USB fans all off of Amazon. And you can see here that it's blowing it's blowing pretty well. It's actually blowing a little bit too strong on this side. You can actually see the seedlings leaning this way a little bit. So I will have to watch that. One thing that I did notice about these fans, because they are small, like this, they're actually the strongest version of this fan that I was able to find. But I find they don't reach, the air doesn't reach all the way over here. You can see kind of how those seedlings are moving, and my leeks are moving a little bit on this side. You can see my leeks are a little bit too long. I need to come and trim them down. They're actually hitting my lights, so that'll burn the tops of them. But I want to keep them shorter. I want to keep them about this short anyways. So I need to come with scissors and trim them down again. But you can see here that it's not really, the fan's not really blowing air on this side of the shelf. So what I've been doing is I've been rotating them, rotating the plants from that corner over to this corner over here, just to kind of make sure they get airflow and everything like that. So what I will be doing later on is probably buying at least one more fan for that side over there. Hey, Purdy, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you trying to help? Or are you just curious? What are you doing? Or you just want to be around? You can be around. Hey. That's okay. So what I'll be doing is buying at least one more fan for that side. What I might do is look into a way of modifying it so it doesn't blow directly on the seedling so much. And so I can kind of have a wider pattern here, because if you see from this side, it's kind of just in the center of the shelf. It's not through the whole width, so it's just kind of blowing in the middle. So I will kind of have to modify that and kind of build on that later. So, but you don't need to buy like USB fans like this. For the longest time, I just had a floor fan that I just had standing right in the middle, right on the floor, and it was blowing on my grow rack right there. So I used that for a few years. But I had both our grow racks right next to each other. So it was an oscillating fan, so it would blow this way, then it'd blow this way, and it would cover pretty much both shelves without any issue. But this year I have both our grow shelves on separate electrical lines, just to make sure on our new house that we don't overload the older wiring. So I had to come up with, I had to find a solution that I would have fans on each shelf. And that's where these USB fans kind of came into play. This is our kind of special needs kitty. She was the runt of the litter, and she's just honestly kind of helpless. She just wants attention and kind of be held all day. And you can see she's fairly small, and our other cat actually takes pretty good care of her, cleaning her all the time and kind of giving her bath, despite her many protests about it. And she just kind of wants just to be around people. She couldn't care less if she was going outside or not. In fact, she's kind of happier she's staying in now. But if you see the videos, you'll see quite often that maybe she's in the background or kind of around me when I'm inside. And she just kind of wants to be around people. She just wants to kind of have company and get cuddles and touches and pets. So if you're buying your plants from a grower or from a greenhouse, make sure to ask the grower or greenhouse or company or whoever you're buying from, have these plants been hardened off? Because as I said before, if they have not been hardened off, they can actually go into shock and they can die. And it's kind of a waste of your money, because you'll have to go out and buy more plants. So make sure that you're hardening them off, either by our lazy, quick, whatever method that we use for thousands of plants, or the proper way of doing it by slowly easing them into the elements. Or if you're growing your own, kind of figure out which way you want to do it. Do you want to do it the proper way, or do you want to do it our lazy way? Either or. Both of them work really well. Like I said before, even though our greenhouse is kind of opaque and you can't, like, it's not really clear, I can take plants that have been in my greenhouse for about a week or so, a week, 2 weeks, depending on things, and I can plant them directly into the garden without any issue, and they just keep on going. It's like they don't even notice. So hopefully this video is able to kind of give you insight into a few different options of hardening off your seedlings, whether it be throwing them in a greenhouse like what we do, or slowly easing, or putting them outside in a sheltered area to start with, and slowly kind of easing them into the real world, and kind of building up their tolerance that way, versus just throwing them out to the garden and kind of hoping for the best. So if you have any questions or comments, or would like to tell us how you harden off your seedlings, make sure to throw them down in the comment section down below, and we will answer them. And we will have a few more episodes of how to harden off, of how to properly start seedlings inside. And then that's going to be pretty much it for this series, because all the plants are going to be kind of ready to go. But we will be doing some educational videos of how to stop slugs from eating your plants. Believe it or not, there is a few ways that you can do it. How to build raised beds. How to even keep cats out of the garden without having upside down forks or blackberry branches all over. We will be doing some educational videos like that, but we will be doing some project videos as well, and maybe some entertainment thrown in there too. So don't forget to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe to our channel. And again, thank you for watching.